everybody, and welcome to Real Shame, a weekly podcast where me and this guy talk about our list of movie blind spots. What the heck is a movie blind spot? Well, I'm glad you asked that question. It's a list of films, could be classic films, could be cult films, could just be a wildly popular film that everybody and their dog has seen, except you haven't. So that's what we do each week. I am Andy.
I'm Adam.
And today we're going to talk about Zack Snyder's second directorial film, so directorial endeavor, a movie that proves that it's hard out here for a Spartan. But before we get into kicking dudes, Persian messengers into a big well, pit, whatever it is, we like to start off each week discussing kind of what we've been watching over the last week or so since we last filmed an episode. So, Adam, what have you been checking out recently?
So I've been watching a couple things. So I caught up with the last season of The New Girl on Netflix. It's been out for a while, and I think there's 8 seasons now. I watched all 7 of them pretty back to back, and then I never caught up with the last season.
That's the Zooey Deschanel show.
Zooey Deschanel show. Gotcha. And because I think there was like a time jump both in the last season and when they filmed it, because I think it was 3 years afterwards is when they filmed it, and also when they when that episode takes place.
Okay.
If I remember correctly, or that season takes place. And it's a really good show. I mean, have you seen it?
No.
So I like the show. It's fun, it's silly, it's goofy, and that's kind of my cup of tea when it comes to comedy. And it was just really cool to see these characters and see them get a pretty good send-off for the final season. The other thing that I watched and that I want to talk to you about was I actually sat down and watched Marriage Story.
Yes. Let's do talk about that.
Because prior episodes we talked about Noah Baumbach and your affinity for Noah Baumbach.
Yes.
And this one was nominated for a Best Picture nomination.
Right.
And was it screenplay also?
I believe, yes. Screenplay, ScarJo was nominated.
Yes. Laura Dern.
Laura Dern was nominated. Of course, she won.
Yes.
Adam Driver was nominated, did not win. So, yeah.
So a very well-received movie.
Yep.
And it's, we kind of got in the habit a little bit of trying to watch all the Best Picture nominees before the Academy Awards.
Yes.
Just so we can kind of see which ones we like better than those.
Right.
And so I didn't get a chance to see this before the Academy Awards, but I did get a chance to catch up with it afterwards.
And you liked it?
I liked it. Yeah, we talked about it a little bit earlier, and I really liked it. I thought it was really well acted. I liked some of the specificity. However you say that. I like some of the specific things he does in the script, like when Laura Dern's talking to ScarJo and she takes off her shoes to get on the couch, and that kind of the way that kind of worked. And there's other aspects of it that just seemed like, when we talked about Kicking and Screaming, one of my biggest complaints was it felt like he took a lot that his friends were doing and just kind of pulled it into that movie. Mm-hmm. And I feel like in this movie he did the same thing, but it was just 1 or 2 steps removed, so it felt not like an inside joke, but it did feel specific enough to be like something that, oh yeah, I totally get that, or I know where that's coming from. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think he pulls a lot from his personal life into his movies, for sure, yeah.
So, I mean, I thought it was a very good movie, well acted with it. And the other thing was that really, I had some trepidation watching it because my biggest worry was, leading up to it, you heard about that fight scene, you've seen the memes for the fight scene, and I thought the whole movie was just going to be dour and mean and just kind of mean-spirited, and I didn't really know if I was in the mood for it, so I had to kind of psych myself up to watch it. And I was actually pretty happy and pretty pleasantly surprised that actually it wasn't that dour of a movie. It was actually a very positive movie, and there's some parts where, it kind of dips down, and then there's moments of unease, but overall the movie was just pretty, it wasn't just all down the whole time.
Yeah, to me, I mean, of course, I really, really enjoyed it. I feel like Noah Baumbach, because I've been following his career since I saw Kicking and Screaming back in 1995 or 96, whenever it was. Obviously, he's 25 years or whatever older. His screenplays have improved. His writing has improved, which, of course, if it didn't, I'd be worried, right? He's not getting any better as a writer and a director, but I feel like his films are getting better. He's getting more serious, I guess, because obviously Kicking and Screaming is really silly, and some of his other earlier films aren't. But even Squid and the Whale was a huge, I think, leap over something like Kicking and Screaming or Highball, Mr. Jealousy,
Yeah.
the movies that came immediately after Kicking and Screaming. But I really like Marriage Story a lot. I thought the performances were great. I I don't disagree with Laura Dern winning Best Supporting Actress or all the other awards that she won because I think she's great. But I don't know. I
You don't
like
think it was the best in the field?
yeah, it's hard to say who I thought maybe was better. Again, I feel like she was deserving of it. I don't want to knock her at all. I thought she was great. I thought Alan Alda was great.
Alan Alda was great,
And I
yes.
love Alan Alda anyways,
Yeah.
but and he maybe he doesn't play as big a role. He was great. I mean, I think the performances across the board were pretty uniformly great. I thought that Ray Liotta was good, although
Yeah, Ray Liotta was. I didn't know who it was. He looked very familiar.
He gets some work done or something.
Yeah.
He looks a lot different than he
Yeah.
did in
Yeah.
well even in
Goodfellas.
even in Goodfellas and I don't want to jump too far ahead in our next episode. We're going to talk about Sin City.
Yeah.
And I did want to mention I watched this sequel to Sin City last night. He's in that.
Okay.
That was only 6 years ago. He looks completely different than he does now in 2019
Yeah.
or 20, technically 2019, but 2020. So I don't know what's going on, but so I can see how
Yeah.
you maybe didn't recognize him. But what I really like about Marriage Story is the writing and the acting and all that stuff is good, but it's like they are mildly unhappy with one another
Mhm.
or moderately unhappy with one another. So they decide, okay, well, maybe it's the best thing for us to do is to get a divorce. But clearly they still have very strong feelings towards one another. But it's like once they set that ball into motion and they start talking to lawyers, it
Yeah,
has
yeah.
to go this certain
It
way.
just
It's
snowballs, right? Is the
Right,
word.
snowballs, right. And it's like they're just kind of along for the ride, but they don't even necessarily, I don't want to say they don't want to get divorced, but they don't feel that strongly about it. But then the lawyers are like, no, you got to do this. You got to do it. Especially, I love it. He meets with Ray Liotta first,
Yeah,
right?
where he's like,
that's the
whoa,
first guy.
whoa, whoa.
And yeah, he's just like a junkyard dog, right? I mean, he's
Yeah.
like, no, we're going to get this. And, oh, you can't say this. Oh, you got to, do this and that. And then Alan Alda is kind of a little more laid back and easygoing.
But then he gets his butt kicked when he's talking to
Yeah,
Laura Dern, and then
absolutely.
I love that scene when
Yeah.
they're in the hallway for the courtrooms, and all of a sudden Ray Liotta character comes in, and it's
Yeah.
like, oh man, he went back to
Yeah.
like the junkyard dog.
Yeah,
I thought it was very cool.
because he was forced to, and I mean, he didn't really want to, but he's like, well, if she's got this Laura Dern lawyer, I've got to get this strong lawyer. So yeah, I really enjoy that aspect of it.
And that was the part that I kind of was confused about, was what made Scarlett Johansson's character want to go to the lawyer. And I felt like Laura Dern kind of talked her into more than she was really bargaining for.
Yeah,
Just, just giving the good sales pitch. And obviously Laura Dern's character, the lawyer's probably done numerous of these, so she can speak from experience, but I definitely feel like she kind of pushed her a little bit farther than she wanted to. And for me, that kind of felt, it was really hard to see all the bad things that Laura Dern was making. I feel like Laura Dern was making Scarlett Johansson feel these things, because some of the things she was saying about how she felt like she never had a voice, and how he was controlling, I never felt like we saw Adam Driver's character actually do that, right?
yeah,
So we hear about it and it's all in the past, but it's really difficult to kind of know how true that is. And if Noah Baumbach was intending for that to actually be the case and for that to be the truth, I really wish he would have shown some more scenes of Adam Driver's character being kind of controlling, because the whole time he seems affable. Yeah, he loses his temper, but it seems like he's trying really hard to make this work. And you know what I mean?
yeah. I mean, I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt. Noah Baumbach, that is. I think that he maybe wanted to portray it more as just a he said, she said kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's what the lawyer sees, right? The lawyer doesn't know them from Adam.
Yep.
Not you, but the lawyer doesn't know them, and so they have to just base things
Yeah.
on how did you feel that, so we as the audience kind of get that same perspective.
That makes sense.
I was gonna say, yeah, Laura Dern has been doing that a while because she represented Tom Petty's wife, and she got him half that song of the waiting is the hardest part, or whatever it is.
What movie is that?
When she's talking to ScarJo in that one scene, she's like, "Yeah, I represent Tom
Oh, yeah, I
Petty's
remember that,
wife,"
I remember that,
because
yeah.
she was saying the
Oh,
waiting's the hardest
right,
part.
right.
I got her half that song or whatever. I thought that was a pretty funny little touch. But no, I'm glad you enjoyed it. I think that more Noah Baumbach movies need to be in your
Yeah.
queue at some point.
I think the Squid and the Whale's on there for
Yeah.
sure for us to watch.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's interesting seeing the first movie he did and the last movie did.
Yeah.
And this is something that we kind of talked about maybe potentially doing too when we get through movies to review, is kind of do that, see, directors that we know's first movies or directors that we know last movies,
Right.
to kind of compare and contrast. So I think that's a really cool thing.
Right. And jumping back one more time, I just want to reiterate, I would say the first 10 years of Noah Baumbach's career are so different than his next 10, 15 years, because that's where you have those kind of goofy kicking and screaming type comedies, or there's even one movie which is basically just almost improv, it seems. Or I think it was largely improv. And then bang, he hit with Squid and the Whale, which was a pretty good critical success. I don't know about commercially, but Squid and the Whale, people were like, oh, this guy can actually write and direct some serious drama. And then he's done Margot at the Wedding. I always want to say Rachel Getting Married. That's a completely different movie.
It's a completely different.
Jonathan Demme, I think.
No, I thought Rachel Getting Married was Woody Allen.
No.
And what's the one that he did? It was Vicky Cristina Barcelona was Woody Allen.
Yes.
Which I don't know why I confound those two together, but I do. So.
But Margot at the Wedding, and then he's done several movies with Ben Stiller and with of course his partner now, I guess Greta Gerwig, his writing partner as well.
And that's the one I want to see. Is I heard really good things about Frances Ha, and I kind of want to see that.
Yep. Good stuff. All right, so I have watched.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. Are you?
No, that's
up?
it.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to see what you've been watching.
I did not have a lot of time this last week or so. I've been a little bit busier than usual. Sleeping, doing my but just had a little bit busier schedule. So I was only able to watch two things, excluding the Sin City sequel, which I watched last night. But we'll talk about that in the next episode. I watched That Sinking Feeling, which is a late '70s film directed by a guy named Bill Forsyth. He is from somewhere in the UK. I guess he's Scottish. I guess I should probably have looked that up beforehand, but I believe he's Scottish. His movies take place in Scotland and in Glasgow, I think, largely. But the first film that he made, That Sinking Feeling, was very low budget. He shot it with a lot of youth actors, because it's young people that are in the movie that he found in like the Glasgow Youth Theater or something like that. So the acting is a little rough around the edges. I didn't really like this film that much. I've seen the follow-up that he made to this film called Gregory's Girl, which was actually an international hit for him. It put him on the map. And then the film that he made right after Gregory's Girl is called Local Hero, which Criterion actually put out an edition of that, I think, last year. I've not seen Local Hero. Gregory's Girl I like a whole lot. That Sinking Feeling, the basic premise is you've got these young kids, they're unemployed. I say young, they're 19, 20, something like that. They're unemployed in Glasgow, and they're just looking for a way to make some money. So one of them hits upon an idea to steal a bunch of stainless steel kitchen sinks, which is where the title comes from, That Sinking Feeling. They want to steal a bunch of stainless steel kitchen sinks and sell them for money. And so the movie,
I guess there's a big thriving market for stainless steel sinks.
It's like they get a lot of money out of it. But the first part of the movie is especially rough because it's very episodic and it's just very disjointed.
Yeah.
They're sitting in a room and they're talking, and one of them makes a joke or something, and then one of them walks out the door, and then it cuts, and then they're all in a car, and it's like, that's kind of weird, because this one guy left and these other guys are still sitting here, and then 5 minutes later they're all in a car together, and it's just, I don't know, it's kind of all over the place. Once they actually do the heist, although it's not much of a heist, but once they actually go to steal the kitchen sinks, then it becomes much more of a movie. It becomes much more of a story, and actually holds your interest, I feel like, more. But everything surrounding that is just kind of, and honestly, I didn't think it was that funny, although it does have a great jazz score. But if you're going to check out Bill Forsyth's work, I would definitely save that for later and go for Gregory's Girl first, because it's a lot better. The other film that I watched was a movie from, I believe, 1938, starring Cary Grant and Katharine Hepburn. And if you said Bringing Up Baby, you'd be wrong, because it's not Bringing Up Baby, it's Holiday. I believe it came out the same year. And, of course, Bringing Up Baby also has Cary Grant and Katharine Hepburn. I love Holiday. I've seen it before. Criterion just released a Blu-ray of it, I don't know, within the last few months, which I picked up a copy. Yeah. So I was like, you know what, I got to revisit Holiday. It was based on a stage play, and it very much shows, because most of the action takes place basically in a mansion. But the gist of the plot is Cary Grant has fallen in love with a rich girl, although he doesn't know she's rich. the movie is he goes to her house to meet her father and the rest of her family and to tell her father that he plans to marry his daughter. When he's there, he meets the sister, played by Katharine Hepburn, and lo and behold, he discovers he has a lot more in common with the sister.
Okay.
And are they going to get together, or is he going to marry the original girl? I'll let you guess, but I'm sure you can figure out what happens in the end. But it's a great little comedy. It's very funny. Watching a movie like that, I really enjoy it because you really see the star power that
Mhm.
somebody like Cary Grant and Katharine Hepburn had. I mean, we don't watch movies with those people in them a lot because, I mean, they've been dead for years. But when you go back and watch movies like that and see them again, you just so reminded of that was what Hollywood stars were like back in the
Yeah,
day.
yeah.
You know, I don't think it quite compares to the stars that we have nowadays. But anyway, I really enjoyed Holiday, so check it out if you get the chance. And also check out Bringing Up Baby and The Philadelphia Story, which also has Cary Grant and Katharine Hepburn, and also Jimmy Stewart.
Wait, the Tom Hanks Philadelphia Story?
No, completely different.
Okay,
Yeah. Philadelphia Story is very much a comedy. I don't think Philadelphia with Tom Hanks is much of a comedy. Although, Philadelphia with Tom Hanks is on my list because I've never seen that
I've
one.
also never seen it. So
Okay,
that's
well,
coming
I
up.
guess it's on both of our lists.
So with that, let's talk about our feature review. But before we do that,
Yes,
I do want to call out that we have a new studio.
we do have a new studio.
So you guys, your eyes aren't deceiving you. We're in a new space.
Yes.
Shooting in the living room was a lot of fun, but we decided to kind of dedicate a room for the studio. So I just want to say thank you to Kirby, our producer,
And it looks good.
for helping us get this set up. And it looks very awesome. And it looks like we're professionals now.
Yes.
So with that, let's talk about 300. "300's the second movie directed by Zack Snyder. It's also written by Kurt Johnstad. And Kurt Johnstad went on to write 300 Rise of Empire and a movie that you and I both liked, Atomic Blonde.
Atomic Blonde, good movie.
And this is the first comic book movie that Zack Snyder directed. He would go on to direct Watchmen. He would go on to direct Man of Steel, Batman versus Superman, I think, and also part of Justice League
Right.
before Joss Whedon took it over.
Yes.
So, Andy, this is a movie that you haven't seen.
Yes.
What do you think of 300?
So this is the part where I get to make a bad joke and ask, is 300, does that refer to the runtime of the movie in minutes?
You really thought it was long?
No, probably it felt long because of all of the friggin' slow motion
Yeah.
in the movie. I feel like if they sped everything up and everything that was in slow motion went at regular speed, the movie would be like less than an hour. It'd be 40 minutes long or something like that.
So the first movie that Zack Snyder directed was the remake of Dawn of the Dead, which we both think is an excellent movie.
Good stuff, yes.
And we don't remember it having a whole lot of what we call speed ramping. It's where the action is normal speed and then it slows down to super slow motion. But I guess he got a taste of it in 300.
Boy, did he.
And then he's used it in all of his features since then.
Some might say overused.
I mean, I'm not a big fan of the slow-mo. We've talked about how whenever I feel like you can really visually tell the movie's being directed, like in quotes, it always takes me out of the movie. So sometimes whenever they do stuff like, for me, the fight scene in Wonder Woman, and that's not directed by Zack Snyder, but it's
He definitely had his
his
stamp on it, right?
Yeah, it's supposed to feel like it's in the same universe, right? So when she slows down to see her superhuman movements and it slows down, it takes me out of the movie.
Yeah.
But for movies like 300, it didn't really bother me that much. And also Watchmen, it didn't bother me that much when he did it. But he did use it a lot in Watchmen.
Yeah, so I feel like I need to go back and rewatch Watchmen because I really enjoyed Watchmen when I saw it, the one and only time that I've seen it. And of course, at that point, he hadn't done Man of Steel and all the rest of the stuff that he's done since then. So I guess I hadn't got enough of the slow mo at that point.
Yeah.
But by now, and that may be one reason why this film I wasn't a huge fan of, because I've seen all of Zack Snyder's movies except for the Owl one, which we talked about earlier,
The
Guardians
animated.
of Gahul or whatever it is. I haven't seen that, but and I wonder if he does slow mo in that. Is the owl like flying and all of a sudden it's just
If I remember the trailers
slowly.
Correctly, he does.
Oh, okay.
If I remember the
So
trailers
this guy's
correctly.
going to use it no matter what.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I think that having seen, and again, the DC movies, I don't want to get a discussion about
Yeah.
that because that's a whole can of worms that we could open.
For
But
sure.
I don't hate the DC movies. I don't have the vitriol for the DC movies that other people do.
like me.
Yeah, but I will say that the slow mo stuff, I'm like enough
Yeah,
already.
yeah.
And so I feel like going back and seeing 300 after having seen the rest of his body of work probably had more of a negative connotation for me. And again, I didn't hate this movie. So let's
Yeah.
just get that out of the way. But then again, hatred for movies is a pretty strong thing, right? I mean, I feel like when I say I hate a movie, it's got to be really, really terrible or unwatchable or whatever. Something that I would give, 1 out of 10 or something like that. And I definitely wouldn't give 300 1 out of 10. I always try and look at movies with an open mind.
Okay.
But of course, you are subjective when you watch movies.
I feel like this is what I was saying when I was watching The Graduate. So
And-
I'm totally on board.
It probably is. It probably is. But let's be frank. We try and say we're objective. When we watch films and stuff, but that's impossible. As we've always said, you bring your own stuff to the table whenever you watch certain films or films in general. You have your own beliefs or whatever things that you like. So you bring that to the movie that you watch. I try and watch movies with an open mind. I felt like I had an open mind whenever I watched this film, but once it started off okay for me.
Yeah.
And he's kicking dudes into pits and yelling, "This is Sparta," and all, which I've seen all that from the trailers that I saw back
And
in
it's
2006.
still excellent.
Yeah, it's still a little over the top, but I can't. I like the visual style of the
Yeah.
film because I understand, just like with Sin City, he's trying to capture what Frank Miller did in the comic book. So I feel like at least it's true to that based on the images that I've seen. I to be frank, have never read any of Frank Miller's comics except for Dark Knight Returns. So I've never read 300.
And that's
or
the same
Sin
for
City.
me.
Yeah.
I think, did he write some of the... I've seen The Dark Knight Returns, and then The Dark Knight Returns 3, I think, is the sequel to that. And did he also do Batman Year One?
Yes, he did.
So I've read
Yes.
the Batman Year
Yes.
One stuff.
Yeah, I sorry, I forgot about that. I've
Yeah.
actually read that as well, and I love Batman Year
Yeah,
One, and
same
I
here.
always wanted them to make a live action version of that. I think they have an animated version of it, but they've
Yep.
never made a live action version of it.
And
I
they
think-
do also The Dark Knight Rises.
Yes, Dark Knight Rises. But
Wait, is that no Dark Knight Returns? Dark Knight
Dark
Rises.
Returns,
is
yes,
the-
yes. Yeah, not Nolan's
Oh,
Dark
not
Knight
Nolan's.
Rises. Yes, we both got a little
Yeah.
lost on that one. But it started off okay for me. Once they went to battle, I just got tired of. I'm sorry to say, I just got tired of the battle scenes over and over and over. There wasn't enough tying me to the movie, and again, all the slow mo. It's like I felt like, and I know I'm exaggerating, but I felt like every few seconds there was like, or whatever. And I don't know if he and maybe the comic is like this. I don't know if he was fixated on the Lord of the Rings movies, but there was a lot of like mutants and stuff in this, right? I mean,
I think
the
that's
Immortals.
all-
That
I
may be
think-
the comic.
Yeah, because
but-
Dark Knight Returns has mutants too in it. Because Batman battles it. I
Yeah,
think
he
that's
does, yeah.
all and then Sin City has a mutant in it. So I think that's Frank Miller. Because if I remember correctly, he actually used the storyboard. He actually used the comic panels as storyboards for the movie. And a lot of the shots he does in the movie, and also he did with the Watchmen, are actually supposed to mimic and look like what they do in the comic book
Okay.
or in the graphic
Okay.
novel.
Okay. So Ephialtes is actually like a Quasimodo hunchback
I
kind of
guess so,
guy in the
yeah.
comic, and I did like that.
We need
Xerxes was like a giant.
Yeah,
it
he
was,
was
it
huge.
was almost like David and Goliath or
Yeah.
something like that. I thought that was a nice touch,
Yeah.
actually. I like that. But the Immortals looked like orcs or something to me.
The
And then
Mortals remind me a lot of Death Eaters from Harry Potter, like with the mask and stuff
okay,
like that. Just kind of has like a Death Eater vibe to me.
yeah,
Of course, that would, I think, happen later after that when we get to first cinematic view of Death Eaters,
I
if I
don't
remember
remember.
correctly. But I saw this movie in theaters when it came out, and I really enjoyed it in theaters when it came out.
Yeah,
And I've seen it a couple times on home videos since then. And so when I was going to watch it this time around, I was really nervous that I wasn't going to like it.
yeah.
But it's a lot of fun.
You still
Like,
it still holds up for you.
it's just one of those things, and maybe I can just turn my mind off, maybe, and I just don't, I'm not overly critical of it. And it's just something fun to watch. And things that he does later on in, the Batman and Superman movies that kind of irk me, I kind of just take it as this part of this movie, and it's part of the way it's presented and part of the fun of me watching the movie.
Gotcha.
A couple things I wanted to call out with the way the movie was produced was it was shot almost entirely on blue screen.
I believe it.
Yeah. They built a kind of like a rock formation that they would shoot from 3 different angles to kind of make it look like different areas, but it was basically a giant soundstage that they did that. And the one scene where and we talked about this, was when the Spartan is running and fighting and it's zooming in and zooming back out.
Mhm.
If I remember correctly on that, they actually had 3 cameras set at 3 focal distance for that, and they would merge it in post to kind of make it do that zoom. But it was actually 3 different kind of views on that actor doing those moves, which I think is a kind of a cool way to do it.
Yeah.
And also, I think this movie kind of led to this, and Sin City kind of popularized the whole acid kind of bleach bypass. They called it crushed in this movie, where they crushed the blacks. But like, I think we'd get movies like Terminator Salvation after this, directed by Mick G, that kind of borrows a lot from the visual style of this movie.
That makes sense.
Because of that. So I think that kind of led it a little bit. And he does this trademark smoky background along with the speed ramping, which drives me crazy in all the movies afterwards. But again, in this movie, I kind of understand it, and it's try to mimic what he did for the backgrounds on the comic book page. So for me, it doesn't bother me as much as it does in his later movies, like it would with Sucker Punch and all those other movies.
It bothers me as well. It bothers me.
So it might be a little bit of when we were first introduced to it, maybe.
I think that's very much it. I think maybe I should have seen it back in 2006 when it came out in the theaters, because after having seen his other work, I'm not saying I dislike Zack Snyder's movies on the whole or anything like that, but I dislike certain things that he does that I feel like, by God, he overuses the crap out of that stuff. Like you said, the backgrounds and
smoky. I think Sucker Punch is wholly Zack Snyder's vision for these kind of movies.
I watched that movie and I felt like I got sucker punched.
For me, it didn't work for me.
No.
There was no story to it.
No.
So I didn't really like it.
I don't either.
The other thing that's interesting about this movie was it was shot chronologically, which is atypical for movies.
Yeah, absolutely.
So they shot they shot in chronological order.
Huh.
So I think it's like I said, I enjoyed the movie, and I think it's an interesting benchmark or to see where Zack Snyder would take those kind of things. And for me, my favorite Zack Snyder directed comic book movie is actually The Watchmen, which is the next movie he would direct after Sucker Punch. I think it's the next comic book movie he directed.
Yeah.
And he also, in The Watchmen, tried to stay true to the comic as much as he could. Of course, the ending changed, and I think David Hayter and the writers helped rewrite that ending. But, he definitely wanted the movie to look a lot like the panels from the comic book. And I think he did a really good job, and that's a movie I enjoy rewatching.
I definitely need to rewatch it because I've only seen it the one time, but I did enjoy it. Like, I agree with you. I mean, I liked it then, so hopefully it'll still hold up for me.
And also, just to jump in, we're gonna watch. I've seen the HBO series of The Watchmen, the sequel series. I'm gonna make Andy watch it.
I'm gonna watch it
because it's awesome, and I want to rewatch it
for sure.
So, any other things you'd like to talk about for 300 before we close?
I did want to say that. So after a while, the battle scenes just got a little tedious and boring to me. But even still, I never liked it when they jumped back to Lena Headey's character back in Sparta and her little dealings with the what was his name, Theron, I think.
Yeah, the guy from The Wire.
Yeah, I to me that all just felt kind of pointless, and it almost seemed like it was there just so somebody would get their comeuppance, because Xerxes doesn't get his he gets a spear
Yeah,
across the
yeah,
face, but he doesn't get defeated. The good guy dies in the film,
yeah.
so it felt like they needed something in the movie. And I don't know, if again, I no expert by far
Yeah.
on the Battle of Thermopylae. I did a little bit of reading about it to see kind of what happened, but I don't know who Theron was or if he was actually a real person or whatever. But it felt like they put that in just so you would get some satisfaction to see a character that needed to get their just desserts, or
That's
get their comeuppance.
that's
But it
int-
didn't feel like it added anything to the movie to me. I know
that's
he was a traitor or
yeah.
whatever, but
That's interesting because for me, I think they used it for more passage of time. So
maybe.
like while they're trying to show the time between different ways of the armies from the Persians, they would cut back. But yeah, I agree with you. The Lena Headey and I wish I can remember the guy's name from The Wire. Uh, stuff was definitely not as strong or as interesting as the muscle bound dudes fighting the army. So
Yeah.
so that's our review for 300. Anything else you like to add?
No, I think that just about covers it.
All right. So next time we're going to talk about another adaptation of a Frank Miller graphic novel, and that movie is going to be.
Sin City.
So stay tuned, and we will review that next. Please send us an email for any viewer questions that we'll be answering in our kind of follow email. Follow us up on Instagram or watch us on YouTube. Subscribe to the podcast, like,
Right.
tell your friends, and we'll see you next time.